Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Agenda item 1, apologies. I've only received one apology from Councillor Biggs. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Can we agree the record of decisions? Thank you. Okay, issues arising from overview and scrutiny, there are none, which takes us then on to item 4, adoption of the Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning Document.
Thank you. This report is updating on the representations received during the public engagement on the Affordable Housing SPD, held for 4 weeks from the 14th of April. Officers' response to the representations that we got and how we made changes to the SPD in light of those. The report recommends adoption of the final SPD and revocation of existing SPDs and guidance related to affordable housing. Just in summary of the consultation, we received 20 representations. 10 of them were no comment or didn't provide any substantive comment in relation specifically to affordable housing SPD. 8 respondents expressed in principle support for the SPD, and we had some positive comments, including a flexible and pragmatic approach that the council was taking. Several respondents did raise some concerns with the SPD, and these have been detailed in section 3 of the report. One comment was that the SPD was too technical, and we've taken that on board and intend to publish a simplified FAQs alongside the SPD on the website for the guidance notes. There are some other comments received that we didn't think we could address through the SPD, such as changes to the implementation of the affordable housing policy in relation to its geographic coverage. However, we have made some changes to the SPD and some of the guidance note to address comments where we were able. One of those was to remove references to the emerging national planning policy framework, and all of those changes to the guidance notes themselves are set out in the table in the report. The 3 key issues, just to summarise those, were raised in relation to guidance note 8, specialist housing schemes, where we've moved some of the references to C2 uses and clarified the position on that more closely in relation to SP5. Guidance note 9, which is the formula for calculating off-site financial contributions. Based on some of the feedback received, we've now included some worked examples of how we got to that figure, and allowed for a site-specific calculation to be undertaken as well. In relation to guidance note 10, deferred contributions, we had some comments on how that was set out based on sales value. That's now been amended to allow respondents to submit information on revenue and costs of their development, and then they would pay the full amount of any uplift to DDC. We've made some other small tweaks and changes throughout, all covered in the report, and the consultation statement at Appendix 2 covers the representations in more detail as well. We've also made some other enhancements to the SPD, one in relation to the designated rural areas. We've made the maps larger and the explanation a bit more detailed on that. And other documents appended to the report are the adoption statement that would be published, and revocation statement of removal of the previous guidance. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It all is coherent, makes sense. 2 questions. One is, we're expecting an updated MPPF. I just wonder how that might impact on our guidance. And with the guidance note number 8, special and older persons housing schemes, the cynic in me says that some of the representations will be from some of the larger operators who may prefer not to have any affordable housing within their schemes. Do we still secure affordable housing when we get the schemes where we're using the class for either sheltered or extra type accommodation?
Yeah, thank you. In relation to the updated National Planning Policy Framework, we are expecting some changes to come forward. Where that is the case, obviously that will be material consideration alongside the SPD and alongside the local plan, and then they'd all be considered in the planning balance when decisions were being made. With regards to Guidance Note 8, the wording does clarify that where we consider that any scheme coming forward creates like an independent dwelling, for example, it might be a specialist facility, but where there are independent units within that have their own front door, etc., they would still be expected to have the policy applied to them, and that's been made clearer through the changes.
So with that, Chair, I think I would like to move that we accept this report and move forward.
Takes us then on to agenda item number 5, the quarterly complaints report. Rebecca.
Thank you, Leader. So in terms of the report, obviously you have a fairly comprehensive report in front of you, so I'll just extract a few sort of key highlights. So the report obviously covers Q4 as well as the whole year in review. We have taken the opportunity to review the entire year complaint data as part of the Q4 data, and this has provided us with more detailed information for complaints than we've ever possessed before, and we have a great deal of confidence in that data. This data will be used to benchmark performance going forward and provides confidence in the improvements made in 25-26. For Q4, stage 1 complaints were down year on year, 134 to 152, although for the year overall they were up slightly, 509 before 473. We have for the first time in this report broken down the figures into the housing services, which are defined as those under the Housing Ombudsman, repairs, management and rents, and all other services, which includes housing options and private sector housing if they're under the other Ombudsman. We've also provided a monthly breakdown of complaints to give you a breakdown of the quarters at table 1. This shows overall that approximately 40% of stage 1 complaints related to housing services. The numbers themselves remain relatively low for our authority, which is good news, and it's very encouraging also when you look at the number that don't advance forward to stage 2. Stage 2 itself, Q4 was broadly flat year on year, although the number overall was up 114 against 84 complaints. In terms of the complaints themselves, very few of those actually progressed beyond stage 2 to the Ombudsman. You'll see from the report that we've had 2 determinations from the Ombudsman in relating to housing repairs. These both came in Q4. But other than that, the majority of complaints, in fact all complaints with the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, no further action was taken in any of those. As the report sets out, there are a number of findings relating to the 2 ombudsmen, and there is less than £1,000 of compensation between the 2 that's been awarded. Looking at the numbers, we're not expecting to receive the full Housing Ombudsman report because we believe we're below the threshold for findings, but we'll see when the Housing Ombudsman issues those. So overall, there's some positivity. Also, heating hot water was slightly down in Q4, which is probably the coldest of the months, so that was encouraging and does bear up that the service is getting to grips with that. In terms of considering the data for acknowledgement times, we've done a full review of all the complaints we received during 25-26. We have identified a small number that weren't acknowledged within the 5 working days. These all originated from contact methods outside of the web portal, and we've been working with relevant services to stop this from reoccurring. All those that came through the web portal were acknowledged within the 5 working days. In terms of the response time, the big headline there is we returned to compliance with housing services, which is great news and reflects the hard work the services have put into returning to compliance. In regards to non-housing services, those weren't at 100% compliance in Q4. However, we've worked with all the services concerned where they failed to meet the deadline, and we're confident that we've identified in each case what the issue was, and hopefully taken steps to prevent that from reoccurring in Q1. So we'll wait to see what those figures are. But again, I think we're getting onto control top of that. So broadly speaking, I think it's positive news. We've identified where we see lessons that have been learned. We've identified areas we can improve. We're working with services where we think that we can drive improvements. One of the things we're looking at in Q1 is working with contractors to ensure that that runs smoothly. So overall, not complacent, and yes, we can obviously always strive to do better. But I think given the overall number of contacts the council receives each day, it's relatively positive for an authority our size. So happy to take any questions arising from the report.
Thank you, Chair. I find this report quite interesting because there's two distinct parts to it. One is the management of complaints, and the other part is the complaints themselves. So dealing with the management complaints, which falls squarely within my portfolio, I'd like to pay tribute to Rebecca and her team for the work that's gone in over the last year. They've completely got a grasp of where we should be, and they are working really hard within the organisation to make sure that we're meeting our timetables, and this is proven in the report that we're seeing today. Heads of service know that most of this compliance is because of Rebecca's team pushing for compliance, and I would like to see over the course of the next year or so that reverses, that the departments themselves are actually pushing for Rebecca's team to say that they're compliant. And I think it's the direction that we're going in, and is to be applauded. I think that's wonderful. I've got some general comments on the complaints themselves. Global one is that the number of complaints is going up, and I think in the world that we live in, that's inevitable. And to a certain extent, it doesn't matter that they're going up. What is important is how we acknowledge them, how we deal with them, and how we settle them if they need to be dealt with properly. And I think the end game, which is how we deal with them and are they settled properly, we've got a very strong record. We could do better, but it would be complacent to say compare us to other local authorities and see how much better we are than them. But we are, but we want to be better for ourselves, for our own purpose. I think that I read, and it's not my portfolio and it's not what I get involved with, but I think I read there is a slight issue and a disconnect. A lot of the complaints arise from third parties, and it's the third party contractors who aren't dealing with things as well as they could do, and they, like everybody else, are under pressure, and we need to be completely on top of them going forward. And I think if they are suffering themselves, someone's off sick, if we make Dover the one they don't want to upset, because if somebody's got to miss a job, what Rebecca's team have been very good with, and they've actually caught contractors trying to deal with the complainant outside of our systems, and we're pulling that in, and I think that really is good work. It means the number of complaints go up, but it also means that we're recording the right number of complaints. So all in all, I'm comforted that our complaints are in a much better place than they were in terms of how we handle them than they were a year ago, and it is reading definitely that how we're settling them is improving. So I commend the report to Cabinet, and I recommend we accept the report and thank Rebecca and her team for the effort.
So that moves us on then to item 6, appointment of members to outside bodies.
Yes, Chairman. So the report sets out a number of appointments that need to be made by Cabinet to some outside bodies. They usually happen on an annual basis. The appointments need to be made as set out on page 179 of the report, and I will run through those just so you're aware who Cabinet is appointing, who's recommended for appointment. One change is that Aylsham and District Workshop Trust have recently changed their articles of association, and they no longer require the council to appoint a member to the trust. So that is for removal. That's at the top of the list. So just working my way through that list. Citizens Advice Bureau, it will be Councillor Loughman. Dover District Fair Trade Network, again, Councillor Loughman. East Kent Spatial Development Company, Councillor Mills. Industrial Communities Alliance, Councillor Mills. Kent Downs AONB Partnership, Councillor Brivio. Kent and Medway Economic Partnership Board, Councillor Mills. Kent and Medway Police and Crime Panel, Councillor Wright. Kent Flood Risk and Water Management Committee, Councillor Biggs. Kent Resource Partnership Members Board, again Councillor Biggs. LGA General Assembly, Councillor Mills. LGA Coastal Special Interest Group, Councillor Biggs. Mary Huffam Almshouses, Councillor Brivio. Municipal Charities of Dover, that's Councillor Brivio as well. Patrol Adjudication Joint Committee, which is essentially parking, that's Councillor Wright. And then the last few, Riverdower Partnership, Councillor Brivio. River Stour Kent Internal Drainage Board, that's Councillor Nee. Sandwich and Pegwell Bay Steering Group, again Councillor Nee, and South East Councils is Councillor Mills. So that's the list of members. And happy to take any questions.
Any questions? No, we're happy to agree that list then. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Moves on then to item 4, the appointment of Dover Joint Transportation Advisory Board Chairman. As Councillor Biggs has been the Vice Chair for the year and obviously alternates, I propose that Councillor Biggs becomes the Chair for the year. Yeah, seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much, which I then think takes us to, right, we're now going into the pink. Is everyone happy to go into the pink? Thank you very much. A resolution has been passed to exclude the press and public. I'd like to thank all those that have taken the time to watch the public part of the meeting. Please ask Democratic Services to end the meeting broadcast to confirm when this has been done.